The Transform Your Mind radio hour is a journey through the mind, offering fresh approaches to old problems that plague the African American woman and youth. Host Myrna Young, life coach, and Arifa Yusuf, social worker, discuss topics such as relationships, depression, the single life, how to supercharge your marriage, poverty mindset, and more. Tune in every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and transform your mind to transform your life.
Welcome to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and today I am extremely excited to welcome Dr. Tra Ahia to our show. Dr. Ahia is a psychologist, and we are just upping the talent with a life coach, social worker, and now a psychologist. I'm so excited. Welcome, Dr. Tra.
Hey, are you ready to be transformed? This is wonderful.
Yes, I'm ready to be transformed. I'm ready to talk to the doctor in the house.
That's right, in the house.
That's right. Awesome. Okay, so let me give you a little bit more information on Dr. Tra Ahia. She is an author of the best-selling book, Call Me an Addict, War and Women. She has been recognized as a champion of women's issues, particularly women who have struggled to maintain a positive balance in their lives despite addiction, emotional and physical obstacles that challenge their health and well-being. Her work in addiction and recovery began some 30 years ago and has empowered thousands of women as they transitioned to a healthy place in their lives. Dr. Ahia's research has been a motivating force in many broken women moving many broken women away from the men in their lives that led them down the path of destruction, confusion, and addiction to a place where they are whole mentally, physically, and emotionally. How wonderful. In her book, Call Me an Addict, Dr. Ahia shares the story of 3 women on their addiction journey. I can honestly say that reading the first story, which we will talk about today, I have never heard a story with this amount of trauma from one woman before. So after I read that, I wanted to invite Dr. Tra on the show to interview her about her book and her work with addiction. But before I bring on Dr. Ahia and to talk about our topic today, which is going to be drug and alcohol treatment for women with trauma, I want to first give a shout out to one of our sponsors for this episode, Build Entertainment. Facebook ain't cutting you a check for going live. Instagram ain't doing it either. Get paid for your time. Get paid for your talent. Join Build Entertainment Talent Agency, working with both beginner broadcasters and trained vets, like singers, dancers, rappers, magicians, models, and even twerkers. Yes, you heard it right. Mm-hmm. Don't waste your time going live for free. Contact Build Entertainment on Instagram at Build to Entertain. You can also contact them on Instagram at In Safe Zone. It's time to build. So once again, that handle on Instagram is Build to Entertain, which is BuildToentertain. Awesome. Well, I want to thank Build Entertainment and our other sponsors today for this episode. But right now, let's get on with the show.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we are going to talk today about the first story in Dr. Ahia's book. Again, that book is called Call Me an Addict. And the first story is Kelly's story. So here is a summary of Kelly's story. Kelly's first memory at 2 years old was her father punching her in the face for not eating her food. Then she remembers at 5 years old taking her father's fingers as she sat on his lap with his friends and sticking it in her vagina. That was the start of her life that included sex with her biological father, an alcoholic and abusive mother, and promiscuity with men from the age of 14. At age 15, her parents gave her away to her boyfriend and moved to another city. She had her first child soon after and was homeless because the boyfriend also moved away to another city and left her to look after a child with no home and no income. Another man gave her a place to live in return for sex. He ended up marrying her, and they had 3 more kids. She started drinking heavily at age 14 and used it for escape. It was drinking, sex, and prostitution. Her story ended with her kids being placed in the custody of Child Protective Services and she being placed in rehab for the 3rd time. What was so sobering to me hearing the story was how 3 generations were ruined from addictions. Kelly's father and mother were both addicts, and she hated them both. She became an addict, and then her eldest daughter followed her lifestyle. And one of the most profound statements in the book to me was when Kelly said that she and her daughter would fight all the time about who was the bigger whore. So today, we're going to go down the rabbit hole. As a person, I normally hate these topics because they make me feel bad. And if you follow me, you know I monitor my energy and always reach for positive energy and positive thoughts and feelings. But I'm committed to bringing you content that helps you with your struggles, and a good many of you have stories that mirror Kelly's. So today we start a series with Dr. Tra Ahia, the author of Call Me an Addict, myself, certified life coach, mental health counselor, Arifa Yusuf Mortley, who's not here today. And we want to offer you strategies to help you navigate when life gives you lemons. As a life coach and a survivor of child sexual abuse myself, I can say that the reason my life didn't spin out of control like Kelly's was because even before I knew anything but mindset and the power of intention, I wanted respect. I did not want to be known as the bad girl or the whore or the girl who is free with sex with all the boys and all the boys talk about her. So I chose to take control of my life. In my book, Out of the Snares, A Story of Hope and Encouragement, I share a similar story about my molester fingering me in his car as he drove me to school. I had the mindset to become a player in this game of life and not to become a victim. You see, victims have no power. Like Kelly, she was powerless to stop her father from molesting her. In fact, another sobering part of her story was when she told her father no, and he returned with the handle of a mop and stuck it up her ass. He told her with that move that she was nothing more than his bitch and that he could do with her whatever he wanted. But we as women always have the power. So all right, so that was my introduction. So now let's hear from Dr. Tra on why she told this story in her book, Call Me an Addict. And maybe, Dr. Tra, you can give us, a synopsis of your work, in the last 30 years or so.
Well, first I want to say, Myrna, thank you for having me. Thank you for having this platform. It's such valuable information that you provide to your listeners. And
thank you.
Hopefully today they will get something. If they haven't from the other times, they will get something from today's conversation.
Yeah, well, that's always my intention, right?
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully, tell their friends. Yeah, we need more listeners who will get something from this and become victorious as opposed to victims. They'll become victorious in their own lives. So one of the reasons why I decided to write this book is that I was an addictions counselor and in several different states, and I kept noticing that the women would get clean and they'd return back to the rehab after 1 year, 2 years, whatever. They had children. We'd have big graduation ceremonies, and they would return.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to take a look at what it was, and they all had one common theme as to what brought them back to this rehab, to the rehab. So I can't tell you what that is. You have to read the entire book to find out. I don't want to spoil it.
Okay, all right.
Get the book.
Okay.
So I interviewed over 100 women, and then I got permission to talk about their stories. Names and places have been changed to protect their anonymity, and also I had to get the 3 stories out. There were hundreds of stories. The other thing that I did, let me take this further, I thought, because it just cannot be in the United States. This just can't be something that is happening in the United States, and certainly it wasn't. So the book takes a global look at how we treat our womankind on the earth. And so as readers read the book, they will see not just in this country but in other countries women are mistreated for one reason or another, specifically for the male purpose, the male-dominated society. So currently,
okay, I guess that's why you named it The War on Women as well, right? Okay.
Yes, the subtitle is War on Women.
On Women, okay.
Clearly, from infancy, you can see some differences in how our society treats women. And then coming forward, I now conduct webinars, or I'm less involved with the substance abuse, the addictions piece. I do lectures nationally and that sort. And primarily now my focus is on neurological impairments in children. So I do a lot of work with parents and other clinicians, educators, administrators, on how we can address those issues so that the children can be academically successful. So currently that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So so when you're an addictions counselor, and we're going to get to that in the second segment. So you'll talk about how you mentioned the graduation ceremony and all that. So maybe you can walk us through how you try to help them get clean as a psychologist. But before we get there, so you interviewed hundreds of women. What made you pick Kelly's story to start off? What grabbed you about Kelly's story that, first of all, you wanted to share, and secondly, you opened the book with it?
Her story, her life path was such a grueling and it was a very sad path that she followed. And it was, for me, it was important that one needed to start this off, because of all the women that I interviewed, hers was the most tumultuous, and it had an impact not just on her life, but also on how I looked at individuals who had this experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult read for me. I'm going to confess, I read before I go to bed, and I picked up your book and I started reading, and I wanted to put it down because I'm thinking this is not bedtime reading. This was when I just gave the readers a summary. But I mean, like, every page, this girl was getting abused. I mean, you're right. So I'm glad that you acknowledge that this is not normal. But I mean, father, grandfather. I think I missed that part. In the summary. Father, grandfather, boyfriends, every single person that she like came into contact with abused her, you know. So yeah, so I mean, I'm glad that the other story is not as beautiful. It was a very difficult read for me. So so that is why I guess you picked her story. And what is, you know, so when you wrote the book and you talk about these stories, what do you hope the reader takes from it?
So one of the things that you'll notice when you read the book is that it's the vernacular is maintained in the book. So I didn't change how they described the information to me. I didn't change that. You'll notice that. And so a lot of my readers will contact me and ask me, hey, there's a few typos, and it's not typos. It's you have to know that woman's story. And I wanted that flavor to be out in the public so that the audience, whoever read it, and, you know, several rehabs have asked me to ship several copies for their the attendees in their rehab facility so they can read it and see that, hey, someone else experienced that. So I wanted my readers to understand the impact that drug abuse has, alcohol abuse, substance abuse has on the individual in terms of their ability to correctly use grammar, pronunciate, articulate their feelings and thoughts, so that we might somehow take a look at changing how we address individuals who, you know, have fallen victim to substance abuse. So that's really what I want. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So, Ray, you wanted to get out there the impact of substance abuse, but with Kelly's story, the substance abuse was, to me, minimal. What was more profound was the physical abuse, right? And the physical abuse was much more profound. So I guess if I was somebody that was, you know, in rehab, then and I read Kelly's story, then maybe I might have hoped that, you know, maybe she turned her life around and she went through much more than I did, so maybe I can do it too. Was that kind of part of some of your thinking as well? No,
not even a little bit, because because the world of addiction includes every single thing that you'll read in the book and the other stories that you will have the opportunity to read. It includes so many things that this person, life events that this person experienced. And one of the pieces to addiction that people don't understand is, you know, your story is really the same as my story. I just experienced different events.
Okay.
People will sit and they will talk about, in rehabs, they will sit and talk about their stories, or if you go to the NAs and the AAs, they sit and talk about their stories. And all these stories have events that are tumultuous and are, you know, like heart-stopping, that people who have never experienced this can even fathom. And so that's one of the reasons why it's something that's really misunderstood. It's misunderstood. I can't understand why you have children, and that should make you want to stop using your substance. That should make you want to stop. But it's so pervasive in that person's life as a result of the trauma, how I can't see my way past this. I can't see my way to stop to care for my children.
Okay. Well, that part I understand, because you also know that I was a foster mom, and that's basically what happens in the foster care system. It's probably why I was invented in the first place, because of, you know, parents that can't take care of their children because of, you know, drug addiction. So all right, so we've got a great background. I just wanted to understand your purpose of writing a book, understand your history. And what made you wanted to tell this book, to tell this story, or tell these women's stories, regardless of if names and places were changed. These are true stories. So that's awesome. All right, so we've got a good start, and we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to touch on some of the treatments that Dr. Ahia has used to help these women get clean and graduate, even though, as she says...
break already?
Right, you're having too much fun? You got to pay the bills, girl. We're going to take a break. We want to take a break to hear words from our sponsors, Duck Maze, Kids Task, and author Kimberly Bussey. So don't go anywhere. The meat is coming right up. So keep it locked. We'll be right back.
Designers Giselle and Max would love to increase your joy with their Joy Swag collection. They sell designer swag that sparks joy. Their website is called Joy Swag. You can check them out also on Instagram at JoySwagCom. On their website, www.joyswag.com, they offer online chat and are available to readily answer your questions. They sell amazing sunglasses, watches, and awesome swag at the most incredible prices. So shop now at their awesome, lovely, chic online boutique. That's at www.joyswag.com. That's spelled JOYSWAG.com. Kid Tasks, an application of good deeds, now available on Google Apps. Kid Tasks is an organizer for your children's daily routine, but it is good for the entire family. This is how it works. Parents, create a list of tasks. It could be as simple as feed your pet, brush your teeth, water the plants, do the dishes, etc. Parents, you can even rate each task in points. Family members do the tasks on the list and they get points. Parents, you can even set your own exchange rate. Example, 1 point may be equal to $1, more or less. Now, having collected a certain amount of points, the kids may ask their parents for their salary for their work. How cool. Why this app is useful for parents? Because it will help to give kids a sense of responsibility and prepare them for the things they need to do when they become older. Why is this app helpful for children? Because children will be rewarded when they help out with chores around the house. They will have the opportunity to earn a salary or pocket money in exchange for working on their tasks. To download this app, head over to Google Apps and search for Kid Tasks. That's KIDTASKS. You can also click the link on my blog to head over to Google Apps. My blog can be found at blog.myhelps.us.
Have you ever wished that you had the information to elevate the conversation at work on how to build a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, now you do. With my newly published book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal by Kimberly Bussey Lewis. This book will give you examples of intentional efforts that level the playing field and yield dividends for your career and your company. The book can be found on Amazon, A Seat at the Table, or A Part of the Meal by Kimberly Bussey Lewis, or on www.motivationalmuse.com. So get your copy today and get your seat at the table.
Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life Radio Hour and Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Myrna Young, and today we are starting a series with Dr. Tra Ahia. Dr. Tra is a psychologist who wrote the book Call Me an Addict, War on Women, and it specifically talks about alcohol and drug addiction. So in our topic today, we wanted to just showcase briefly some drug and alcohol treatments for women, specifically with trauma. So, Dr. Tra, in your bio, you talked about having worked with addicts for over 30 years, and then you added in the first segment that you were actually an addictions counselor for many of those years, even though now you've transitioned into neurological, work with parents and children. But I want to ask you, what are some of the treatments that you prescribed to, let's say, someone like Kelly, because I know you worked with Kelly. So how did you help her deal with her drug addiction and her trauma?
So usually someone is asked to go into a rehab, a facility, either by the police or by their family, or even some people just walk in. So there is an intensive on-campus process. They have to sleep there, they eat there, they have chores or assignments in the home, they have to go to AA meetings, they learn about addictions, and then they see the therapist, myself, which walks them through this path and how they got there. So a lot of it is one-to-one counseling, where you are constantly pushing that individual to take a look at how they got to that point. And then the most challenging piece to all of this is helping the client become accepting of what they're hearing and understanding about themselves and then about this thing called addiction. So at some point they are able, if it's a 30-day, 60-day program, what have you, 6 months, they're asked to go into a on-campus housing where they have their own apartments, perhaps. And they might share that apartment with another individual that's in the rehab as well. And they're asked to get jobs and perhaps work and pay back some of the things that they have done in the community. You know, the police might say, hey, you owe this, that, or the other. And then after, say, about a year, then they're released from the program, but they are expected to continue practicing what they've learned through going through the AA, NAs, and those meetings. So taking care of themselves. But at this point, they've learned self-care, self-love, and self-respect. Unfortunately, a lot of people fail to embrace that. And this is why we see them come back. And the traumas that a lot of people experience, as you talked about earlier, this young lady, she received so much traumatic events in her life that it was such a challenging path to get past that, to get past those traumas. How do you get past those traumas when they happened to you when you were so young? And they continue throughout your life. And so they permeate your decisions, your thoughts, your practices. How are you being a parent, being a responsible individual. So though that's the path that a good clinician would take the client down.
Okay. Well, I understand, and I've seen some of it in movies, and I've seen basically what you've talked about on movies, and so I'm a little bit familiar with it. In fact, there's a there's a show, Mom or something, that talks about addiction. It's a comedy, and I watch it quite often. And they talked about the same thing with the rehab and the women, and and having a sponsor once they get out of rehab to help them and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a little familiar with that. But I want to push you, because I want to know, and I'm sure the audience wants to know too, on the therapist, on the one-on-one counseling, right? Yes. I mean, what are some of the things that someone that's trying to get over trauma can do or think in order to not pick up that bottle? Because we're talking about alcoholic addiction, to pick up that bottle when they're feeling bad,
So the bottom line to addiction, the bottom line to becoming healthier, is when you no longer desire to live that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. That's the most challenging piece to it. So getting someone to, I really am done in my addiction. I'm done. I don't want to do this any longer. The desire has to be there. And I can't, the parent can't, the kids can't, the bosses can't. Nobody can make that individual lose that desire to live that way. No one. That has to come from within that individual. So that's the epitome of your question. However, trying to get that person to that point, or to see that, okay, well, maybe I could make this choice about what I'm doing, part of it, depending on the individual's background, is self-acceptance and not holding on to. So you mean I really have to let go of that sexy John that got me in the streets? I was making money. How do I get to let go of all of that? I don't want to work at McDonald's. I don't want to work for an accounting firm. I want that money, and I want to be able to have my drug too, because it takes me away from all the traumas that I feel. So it takes a long. It's a challenge. It's a gargantuan challenge that individuals embark on. I applaud people who go down that path, because it's seriously no joke. It's a very serious path. Once you decide, I'm done, how do I get out of this? And you have to align yourself. The other piece is, who am I aligning myself with? If my therapist, I have to trust in what my therapist is telling me. So I'm going to blindly trust this. Mind you, physiologically, the drug or the alcohol has more of an effect than an individual telling me this. So I have to have the willpower to overcome that substance, whatever it is.
Okay.
So I have to blindly walk. I have to just have faith and blindly walk on what my counselor tells me, and I can do that in the shelter of a rehab. I can do that in the shelter of a rehab. Now, the idea is, do you choose to do it, though?
Yeah, in the shelter of a rehab and everything is, when you're living in a bubble, then I'm understanding. But you talk about the women that when they go into the world, they're not able to sustain that. And that is so with a lot of drug addicts. But what I know about alcohol is that, and it's really, interesting that as a very young girl, I used to watch The Young and the Restless. And Mrs. Chancellor, Mrs. Chancellor was an alcoholic. Yeah, she was an alcoholic. So, she would talk about every morning you wake up, you have that urge to drink, and you just have to make the choice not to do it. And it's the same with a lot of drugs. You get the urge, but you have to make that choice, and that is extremely difficult. So All right. Well, yeah. So I'm understanding that, yeah, the treatment is basically talk therapy, which is basically what we're doing here. Which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, which is great, because a life coach, the same thing, social worker and mental health counselor. That's what that's what Aretha does. It's talk therapy and getting people to, getting clients to make better choices and understand, where they want to be, how they want to live, understand the end goal. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And therapeutically, you can use a theoretical perspective. A lot of times you'll hear clinicians use CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where they focus on the cognitive part, the person's ability to process what's coming into their frame of reference, how they think about that information, how they're learning that information, and sometimes relearning and then plugging in the behavior with that. And so a lot of times individuals will get homework and with that cognitive piece to help them work through it. So this whole how do I get well doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 130 days, 60 days. You're just doing individuals a disservice by suggesting, okay, you're going to go into a 30-day rehab. No, you need to if it took me 10 years to get here, you think 30 days is going to get me away from this? No, it doesn't happen like that. Give me 10 years of, getting clean. Give me 10 years of work. Help me with that. And so our society expects us just as humans to, you got it, you've been in rehab 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you got it, now go out there and be productive. And it doesn't happen like that. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, again, we're bringing awareness to a very unpleasant subject, and hopefully, someone that's listening, they're getting some hope that, maybe they have unrealistic expectations, or even, wives that maybe their husband is, or, family members, they have unrealistic expectations. Hey, we put you in a rehab facility, and you're gonna come out and do better. There's so many movies, so many data that I can pull from right now on that subject. And I had we'll talk about it in one of our other episodes, because I'm sure you're going to be talking about crack cocaine in one of those. But I had personal experience with with someone that was addicted to crack, and I know that that's one of the worst ones as far as addiction goes. All right, so we've talked about Kelly's story. We've talked about some of the ways that you treat people when they come into you for one-on-one counseling in the rehab facility. So as an inpatient, is there ever outpatient therapy for addiction?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes. You can. Yes, and a lot of people will tell you, no, I can make it just on outpatient. They will try to convince themselves, as the clinician we know, that you would need some intensive treatment like an inpatient facility. But a lot of folks will transition from the inpatient to the outpatient, which is fine, if that works for you. And it's really all individual-based treatment. Okay. So the treatment plan that I would give to someone else might not be as effective as a treatment plan that I would give to another individual.
Right, because again, it would be part of their CBT, how they process information and all that. Yeah, I get that. And one of the things that just popped into my mind too is that outpatient therapy is probably just talking about your stressors, because when you can talk about your stressors and talk to someone about, that's going to help you from reusing, because now at least you can talk about it when you're, call up your therapist and say, this is bothering me, and I feel like using, but at least they can talk about it. So that's probably a way for them to stop picking. And that's where, like in the show that I'm talking about, whenever something like that happens, they call the sponsor, because you're triggered, and you call the sponsor, and the sponsor helps you to not use. So
well,
it's the same thing.
They get similar. Their plan is similar to what's in the inpatient So it's not only what triggers me, but it's more than just what triggers me. It's, what are you doing? And the same things you get in inpatient, except you go home.
You go home. I
you
like
get
that.
to leave. And you get to be challenged. I'm not going to use again. Well, sitting right there in front of your face. Are you serious?
Yeah, right. Yes, got it. All right, well, let's take our second break. We're getting down to the end of it already, so this is a great conversation.
No.
Love it. Right, I know, right? You're having too much fun.
Okay.
All right, well, let's take our second break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up. We're gonna Dr. Ahia is gonna tell you how you can get in touch with her if you want to be a part, any of her lectures or any webinars or anything like that. I'm going to share some of, life coaching tips. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked. Turn it up. We'll be right back.
Designers Giselle and Max would love to increase your joy with their Joy Swag collection. They sell designer swag that sparks joy. Their website is called Joy Swag. You can check them out also on Instagram at JoySwagCom. On their website, www.joyswag.com, they offer online chat and are available to readily answer your questions. They sell amazing sunglasses, watches, and awesome swag at the most incredible prices. So shop now at their awesome, lovely, chic online boutique. That's at www.joyswag.com. That's spelled JOYSWAG.com. Kid Tasks, an application of good deeds, now available on Google Apps. Kid Tasks is an organizer for your children's daily routine, but it is good for the entire family. This is how it works. Parents, create a list of tasks. It could be as simple as feed your pet, brush your teeth, water the plants, do the dishes, etc. Parents, you can even rate each task in points. Family members do the tasks on the list and they get points. Parents, you can even set your own exchange rate. Example, 1 point may be equal to $1, more or less. Now, having collected a certain amount of points, the kids may ask their parents for their salary for their work. How cool. Why this app is useful for parents? Because it will help to give kids a sense of responsibility and prepare them for the things they need to do when they become older. Why is this app helpful for children? Because children will be rewarded when they help out with chores around the house. They will have the opportunity to earn a salary or pocket money in exchange for working on their tasks. To download this app, head over to Google Apps and search for Kid Tasks. That's KIDTASKS. You can also click the link on my blog to head over to Google Apps. My blog can be found at blog.myhelps.us.
Have you ever wished that you had the information to elevate the conversation at work on how to build a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, now you do. With my newly published book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal by Kimberly Bussey Lewis. This book will give you examples of intentional efforts that level the playing field and yield dividends for your career and your company. The book can be found on Amazon, A Seat at the Table, or A Part of the Meal by Kimberly Bussey Lewis, or on www.motivationalmuse.com. So get your copy today and get your seat at the table.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, Coach Myrna Young, and in the co-host chair today is Dr. Tra Ahia, psychologist and author of Call Me an Addict, War on Women. And in today's episode, we were talking specifically about Kelly's story, who was had a lot of trauma in her life and ended up becoming an alcoholic. She had 4 children, and at the end of her story, what happens normally is, the children get taken away, and Kelly went into rehab, which is probably where she met Dr. Tra. But that's exactly what happened, right? Okay, yes, awesome. Yeah. I just guessed that.
Oh,
but
but
one of the things I just want to reiterate for you is our topic today is drug and alcohol treatments for women with trauma. And Dr. Ahia gave us a snapshot of what actually happens when someone goes in for treatment. She talked about the fact that if you have been, tagged as an addict, then, the police might put you in rehab, your families might put you in rehab, or you can realize you don't want to live this lifestyle anymore and try to get help. So you go into an intensive process where you get one-on-one counseling with, psychologists like Dr. Ahia, and their main focus is to get you to understand how you got there. In coaching, I have one of my most favorite sayings is, wherever you are, you drove there, right? So however they got to this point, they drove there. It could have been, extenuating circumstances, but usually they're the one that took the drugs, they're the one that did whatever, so they drove there. And she talked about then they have to accept that, accept that this is where they are, accept that maybe they're an addict. Some people still, deny it, accept that maybe they're an addict, and the process is between 30 days and 6 months, and then after that they go to, I'm not sure if they're calling it a halfway house, but some form of where they go into, a home, and then they're expected to get jobs and, practice self-love and self-care, and maybe even go to an outpatient, psychologist in order to make sure that they keep on doing what they're supposed to be doing. But even after all of that, what Dr. Ahia said is that most of these women go back into a life of drugs, and her take on it is that because men are usually the reason, and we're going to have one episode specifically on that topic. But I'm sure there's a deep one there, right? Yeah. Go ahead. So, sorry, go ahead. You want to comment on that?
Well, certainly we want to take a look at down the road here. Why is that even mentioned? Why is that play a role in these women's addiction? Why would that play a role? So, yeah, most definitely we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a whole section on what men do to women, the trauma and the psychological tie that women have to men, and all this type of stuff. So that's going to be a listen for that episode. But sticking to this topic, in my book, Out of the Snares: The Story of Hope and Encouragement, I actually say that I extracted some positive lessons from my abuser. And I remember that one of my reviews called me a narcissist. She's saying, how can you take some positive things out of that, right? But, I don't think I'm a narcissist. I just felt that, you are supposed to, every test to me has a testimony, and everything that you go through has something positive. And I believe that the lesson that I took out of my experience is that, the abuser can take your body, but they can't touch your soul. And you have you do not have the victim mentality. So I just want to ask you, Dr. Ahia, is there any positives at all in Kelly's horrible, traumatic story?
Well, the positives, knowing that particular case, one of the positives is that she's a strong woman.
Okay.
She's strong. Now this happened over 10 years ago. However, she's still living. So there's strength through all of this. You can make it through all of this. They'll have to read the book to find out actually what happened to her. But the fact that she is still living today, it just says the power that this woman has. And just as a side note, I'm interested that person who said you were a narcissist, were they a clinician? Because that's a technical term we use. Are they a doctor? You know what I mean? Did they evaluate you?
No, I mean,
exactly.
Right. She just felt that I'm saying that I took some positive out of it, and she didn't think that. She think that I had a narcissistic view. She didn't actually call me a narcissist. She said I had a narcissistic view.
Well,
she said I had a narcissistic view of it. But
the fact that she would use that term.
Word, right?
We don't use those terms. Just throw them out.
Right.
It's indicative of a mental health issue if someone is a narcissist. So we're not just going to, you're narcissistic. Well, I didn't do any an evaluation of you or anything to come up with that conclusion. So that's interesting.
But the point I want to make, though, is that people don't think that you can take positive out of really bad things. And they're, if you were to listen to Tony Robbins and you listen to all those, coaches, they will tell you that people take positives out of really, really bad situations. And you've got to be able to do that. You've got to be able to take the lesson out of it. And, I did. And that has set me up for taking positives out of every situation, because every situation, we are all opposites. In order to get good, you have to have bad. In order to see darkness, you got to have light. You know what I mean? So I like that you say that the positive is that she's still standing, the positive that she's strong, because that is actually the mantra for women that have been abused. Strength. Keep on carrying on. Women are, super women. We can handle these things, and a lot of times we can handle them better than men. So,
boy.
Hey,
one of the things I like to encourage people to think about is, and you said you have to go through one or the other, the yin and the yang, and there are individuals that don't necessarily have to live in the rain to get to the sunshine, but they know that it exists. They've seen other people's experiences and they learn from those, so that they don't too walk that path. So individuals don't necessarily have to experience the horribleness of life, those events. No, I don't want to go down that path. I'd rather not.
Exactly.
I see what you went through.
Exactly.
So I'm going to choose something else.
Yes, exactly. So, right. Exactly. All right. So how can our listeners get in contact with you if they resonate with your work? So how do they do that?
They're going to go to www.4lifeservices, FORLIFE, services with an S, -cc.com.
So that's your website, where they're going to find there?
Yeah.
Information about your work.
How to contact me, my work, how to register for, for whatever they're interested in. Just to call and say thank you, how to get the book. They can go on Amazon and get the book, or I can send them a signed copy. Hey.
Okay.
Signed copy.
Yes. I got my signed copy. Right.
Right.
All right. Awesome. Right. All right. So let me repeat that. So that is forlifeservices.cc.com. And it's Apple. Go ahead.
No. forlifeservices-cc.com.
Okay. All right.
www.forlifeservices, services-cc.com.
Got it. All right. Now, you can also get a link on, if you head over to my blog, which is blog.myhelps.us, you will have a transcript of our episode today. You will have links to Dr. Ahia's website and also links to our sponsors. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you for being with us until the end of this broadcast. Please show your support by posting a review on iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. If you have any questions or comments on this contact, please post your comments either on my blog, which is blogs@myhelps.us. You guys are also invited to join my private Facebook group called Life Coach, and you can post your comments on there as well. And just my final word before we wrap up is that I want to leave you with two women who have been abused and went on to have exceptional lives. One of them was Oprah Winfrey, and the other one was Maya Angelou. Both of these women were abused, had some horrible childhood, but they became a player in their lives and not a victim. So they chose to move forward, and you can too. Like Dr. Ahia says, it's the choices that you make. Sometimes they're hard to do when drugs are pulling at you, but it's a choice that you still need to make. So, Dr. Ahia, I want to thank you so much for this awesome episode. Thank you for your time. I know that you have all kinds of things that you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that you took an hour out of your day and come to impart your knowledge and to build awareness and empower women on this show. So I want to thank you so much. Any last words?
Yes, you're not alone, and life is so short. Live each moment with just love and passion for you, for being you.
Yes, awesome. Yes, starts with self-love. All right. Yes. So, again, thank you guys all for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind podcast. Remember to support the podcast by posting a review and sharing it with your friends. All right.
Make your comments. All right.
Yes. We want to hear from you. And if you've got a story that you want to submit, then, of course, do that as well. All right. So until next time, namaste.